guys, this is Gamer welcome to another Pokemon TCG video. This time, we're going over, well, a bit of a deck showcase, to be honest. I have quite a few, if we zoom out a bit here. I have obviously done quite a lot with my own draft and stuff here. We have some decks on the others as well, which I managed to get from the previous week. And, well, there's a lot to go over. 2004 is a very diverse format overall. We haven't been able to build everything that, we would want to do. Unfortunately, Gardevoir has stubbornly remained elusive considering who actually has access to the card. And there's a couple other things. I would like to have built Mewtwo, but unfortunately that has just not been the case here. I should also note, none of these decks are going to be 100% refined. There's going to be a fair few which are at least pretty close, but some of these are our own creation. Some of them you've already seen on stream before, but most of them are at least somewhat different. They've obviously been tweaked a little bit with the advent of having played last week as well, so there are changes, especially to stuff like Magma over here. So there's a few bits that way. There's also some more modern insights which have gone into these. If you actually looked up these decks for yourself on something like TCG Archive or whatnot, you would see rather different lists for quite a few of these. But obviously, apart from the fact that we're in a draft and we don't have all of the cards we would ever want, we're kind of taking this in a different direction too. Deck building was just different back in the day. There was a lot of inconsistency in a ton of builds, and we have kind of tried to remove as much of that as possible here. So we're going to see a fair bit of different stuff. Anyway, let's just start with something that we did see last weekend, because this is probably my favorite overall build that I have had so far with this. This is the so-called Metagross deck. This is Metagross with the Gorbis over here. So Metagross as a card lets you shift any metal energy from your bench to your active as often as you want per turn. This is metal energy, not like the original, so any rainbow based energies can get moved as well, and that's fortunate because Gorbis doesn't really care about metal, but it cares about psychic energy, and it needs a water to pay its attack cost, so you use the rainbow energies for that. We have 6 outs for that in this deck, and all of them are transferable to the Gorbis, so it's pretty good. The Gorbis itself is probably the best overall attacker in this format. It is very frail at only 70 HP, but it doesn't take a lot of energy to attack in its own right. It's got 0 retreat, which is kind of crazy, and it does more damage for every psychic energy in play. That is yours and the opponent's, so if they have any psychics or rainbow energies in play, this will do bonus damage for you as well. So you very easily get this thing to 60 to 100 damage without too many problems, to be honest. This deck doesn't accelerate the psychic, so it's not necessarily the strongest Gorbis, but of course Metagross is weak to fire because it is a metal type. It's metal and psychic, which is key to note here, because that does actually matter. It lets you hit psychic weakness without being weak to psychic or dark, which is interesting. So it's pretty good. You actually resist psychic, which is like not a thing for metal cards at this point, so it's kind of fun. As far as the actual deck itself goes though, the main gist of this is that Beldum's Magnetic Call replaces the need to use Dunsparce in this deck, because you do have to flip heads for it, but you just get to search your deck for a metal basic and just put it onto the bench, so you get another copy of the Beldum. That gives you another shot at getting extra stuff out. You just get these every turn, or you can get Jirachi, which is the main replacement for Dunsparce in this deck, where you actually just get to put a damage counter on the Jirachi, not the Pokemon that you target with this, and just evolve it. You just search your deck for a card that evolves that, so you can use this to get the Beldum into Metang immediately, and then next turn that can be a Metagross and you are good to go. The Metagross itself does have a bit of an awkward attack cost here. It is Psychic Metal Colorless, and that's kind of the same with the Jirachi too. The Jirachi's second attack is decent, but Psychic Metal can be kind of hard to pay sometimes, especially for Jirachi that can't use Double Rainbow, but it's worth it. If you're up against a Psychic weak Pokemon, this is 60 damage with a Confusion Flip. Even if you're not, the Confusion Flip is sometimes worth it. That 30 damage has mattered in quite a lot of games, so definitely don't underestimate it as an attacker here. As far as the other bits go with this is a healing tank deck. Considering that Metagross is part metal, you can do the damage reduction with metal energy, so that's going to be one of the main sort of components here. So we look to use Mr. Briny's Compassion. We do have a Pokemon Nurse, though honestly, I feel like this should just be a third Briny. The only reason it isn't is because Registeel EX is one of the cards I'm playing in here right now, and this does not play with Mr. Briny, because Mr. Briny ignores Pokemon EX, you can't pick those back up. So if you want to heal this, and you would want to heal this because it's got its own tanking ability as well, you often get like minus 40 damage on this thing with the Metal Energies plus Exoskeleton. You kinda need to play a Nurse as well. I'm not super thrilled with it, but this attack is worth it to me to actually put this in. But this is one big consideration to change, is take this out, take the Nurse out and put another Briny in here, and then use this slot for either a third switch or for Magnetic Storm, which I do have one copy of, and honestly against like a Lightning deck in particular, you kind of want it. See, the problem with Lightning Pokemon is that they resist Metal and hit Gorbis for weakness, and whilst most Lightning Pokemon are frail enough that you can one-shot them, if you can't do that, you don't really have a good attacker against them, so that ends up being a bit of an issue. But it's only a minor issue in the long run. This deck does play 4 switch cards. I probably would like a 5th one in here, but I did kind of favour putting the 3rd Gorbis in here for covering fire, because fire is going to be relevant in this coming week. And then we do have a couple of pivot options here as well. Metang has Levitate, as does the other Beldum over here. It's worth having one copy of this in, because you can just Metal Juncture up an energy to this when you switch, and that just gives you 0 retreat. So you can use Metal Juncture to move all of your stuff to this, use Mr. Briny to heal the thing that's been tanking all the damage, like the Metagross here, and then if you've got Metang out, you can just evolve it into the Metagross if you want, or if you have another Metang or something on the bench, you can evolve that into Metagross, use Levitate for 0 retreat, go into the new one, and you are hitting fresh, which is absolutely awesome. Very, very cool deck, and honestly, yeah, it's probably my overall favorite one that I've seen out of this so far. I may cut one Desert Ruins to put in Magnetic Storm going forward, because most of the decks that we have played do not have many EXs at all. It is a Sai Swampert deck, and now Blaziken EX from Pepper is about it. We'll see both of those down below, but there's not a lot of EXs going around at the moment, so Desert Ruins may actually be a cut here. Speaking of, this is now, I think, version 5 for my Magma build here. For a deck I'm not super keen on, I've certainly gone through a lot of iterations of this, but I think it's because I know it's good. We've played it several times now, on and off, playlist recordings, and basically every time it has been very strong, with, I think, exactly one exception, which was, the week before Steven's Advice. This card has honestly just been such a game changer when it comes to playing so many of these decks, because just being able to draw 4 to 6 cards on a supporter has been absurd. Keeping all the stuff that's in your current hand is just really, really powerful for this. This might not be the final iteration I play with this deck, but it's definitely a good one. Again, maybe Desert Ruins gets cut down a little bit, but this is how you generally deal with the 150 HP EXs, so maybe not from here. I think this is probably fine. Maxi is a card I am most likely going to cut for the 3rd Mr. Briny's Compassion, I reckon, because honestly, this guy has 100 HP. If you've not seen, the general idea of the Magma deck is that Team Magma's Groudon is kind of crazy for just being an efficient one-prize attacker that can take advantage of Darkness Energy, hits for a good weakness in fighting, and just pulverizes, quite literally. If the opponent's got any damage cannons on them, which his first attack facilitates, they need at least 2, but, linear attack does 20, so that's fine. You effectively do 90 if they have 2 damage cannons already on them, and that's not including Darkness Energy, and yeah, the whole like magma deck is designed to just like burst out stuff. You've got magma energy that you can play in order to do double fighting, so you don't even necessarily have to commit that many regular basic energies to do the attack. You've got darkness energy to boost a Groudon, also boost a Claydol too. This did come up. Claydol is mostly here for Magma Switch, which combines with the Camera Up in order to accelerate an energy from the discard, puts a couple of damage counters on the Camera Up, but that's generally fine. You shift that energy with Magma Switch to any of your other Team Magma Pokemon. So it's pretty good. You don't actually have to use this with Team Magma, it's just that Groudon is generally really strong, and you don't typically want to play another attacker to do it, because this is a basic, so it's just really good. But the actual Claydol itself can do a decent amount of damage as well, so there is that. And you also have Zangoose that can do good damage too. Doesn't take advantage of Darkness energy, but you can do 60 for free energy, which is just generally quite strong. I may have underestimated this a little bit, but honestly it's just solid. Like, with Magma Energy being able to provide stuff for this too, it's really, really good. The innovations from this deck so far, I have now moved up to a full 4 reversal in this deck. Pokemon Reversal is kind of absurd, to be honest. The reason you would play this is to pick off Dalcatties and stuff, right? If you can pick off Dalcatty, or Blossom is another really good one against this deck because it hits Groudon for weakness, but Blossom gets one-shot by Camera Up. So if you can reversal the opponent's Blossom and kill it with a Camera Up Extra Flame, oh, the Flame Ball even, Extra Flame is a different one. If you kill it with Flame Ball, then that just makes so many matchups so much easier, and having 4 copies of Reversal just gives you much more of a shot to do that, right? Otherwise, I think the main innovation I would like in this deck at this point is Fast Ball, because one of the problems I've found is that if you don't have Claydol, not being able to shuffle your energy around is just a huge problem. And we have enough basic gathering in this deck with the Zangoose that maybe taking out 1 Magma Ball and potentially something else for a second Fastball could be the play. Like, if we give up, I don't want to give up the Strength Charm, because this is my own sort of, not quite innovation for this deck, but this is another one that I've put in which has been super good, because you just reach much better with this. If you have a Darkness Energy on the Groudon, like just 1 Darkness and the Strength Charm, that hits 70, which is enough to take out most of the Stage 1s that you'd be going against. So, very, very powerful card here. Just lets you get to numbers you wouldn't otherwise. So I don't really want to take that out. But I think maybe even the switch. If we have a 3rd Briny in here, then we probably don't need the physical switch. So we could take out these 2 and put in like 2 Fastball. Might be the play. This is as much a deck discussion as it is, you know, like looking to innovate stuff here as well. So, I don't know. Fastball being able to get only Camera Up or Claydol, like, you've only got 4 cards it hits, so you're like decently likely to hit the one that you actually want. Just seems to make sense here. Anyway, 3rd deck is the MLB deck, as it's called here, the Metacham Lantern Bennett deck, which lets you hit just a variety of weaknesses for relatively low energy. This deck's a little bit hampered by my draft here. We would ideally not be playing the Physical Psychic, and we probably wouldn't be playing the Rainbow either. We'd be playing 4 Double Rainbows and 4 Multi if I had them, but you've got to make do with what you have, basically. The gist of this deck is more or less that just everything hits decent weaknesses for pretty good damage and low energy requirement too. Metacham hits more for every damage counter that's on the opponent, or takes advantage of the super high hand counts in this game and just lets you do tons of damage with that. Even an average size hand of like 6 cards, you're doing 70 damage on that, which is pretty solid. Meditate just lets you finish things off very easily. We've seen this with Jinx in the past when I played it with Crobat. We don't have any of that kind of effect, unfortunately, in this format, but it's still very strong anyhow. I played the other Medicham in here instead of the 3rd Lantern because it's got a single energy attack that can do a ton of pressure. If we have this many Strength Charm in here as well, this just lets you hit 50 on fighting weak stuff very easily. which is Dunsparce, obviously, but also things like a 50 HP Skitty or the Magnemite or something like that. You can easily pick apart people's engines with this. I might want to play more Reversal as a result of that as well. Could probably take out ATM Rock and something to put in like for Reversal. That would probably be better. We do have the Banette in here as well once a couple of Medichams start getting KO'd. Darkness Chant is a way of getting damage counters into play. This is much better if you have double Rainbow, because damage counters are not actually affected by the damage reduction of DRE. But again, we only have 2. But it still works. You can put like 6 thingies in play, or if you're up against a deck that plays a ton of special energy, think like the Team Magma deck that we saw above, that's got, you know, 4 Magma, 4 Darkness Energy, and a couple of Rainbow usually. Shadow Steel just does a ton as well. Very, very powerful single energy attack here too, which you just cannot really sleep on for a lot of decks. Then the Lantern is the other thing here. Again, much better if you have more double rainbow. That's why I focused a bit more on Medicham as an overall thing here. Lantern absorbs basic energy for a little bit, but then the reason this works with double rainbow is because you can just discard that as your discard or lightning, right? We wouldn't play as many physical lightning if we had 4 DRE, and you would use that to discard just double rainbow energy, and you do 80 instead of 90, but 80 for 2 energy and a discard is still very powerful. Like Rayquaza's been doing that the whole time, and it's been really good. So it's just nice keeping energy in play and being able to do a lot with that. A lot of colorless in the attack costs of the non-Lantern Pokemon here really means you can just be kind of flexible with the stuff. So overall, yep, fast aggressive deck that just does a ton of damage, and it's a little on the frail side, but it's not too hard to set up, so it's very good. Then we have Exploud over here. The initial Exploud list is using Wobbuffet as its only partner. You don't actually play Dunsparce, because why not kind of fills the role of Dunsparce, and that's kind of neat and all, but looking at the way our little local game is here, I know that Matt is very heavy on the Gorbis, which he has the 4 double rainbow for as well. So that means pretty much that going Psychic as your main energy here is going to be a little difficult in that matchup. So instead, the more conventional way of playing this now is to use the Magneton and Delcatty, as most decks can use here. Exploud itself has got like 4 different attacks that all are situationally useful. Most of the time you're going to be using Breaking Sound to spread 10 to all of the opponent's Pokemon, and then when they're weakened enough you use Ancient Technical Machine Rock in order to devolve all of those Pokemon and bring them down to a lower HP state where you KO them basically all at once, which is pretty cool. Normally you would play more of this, but I have only got 2 right now, so that's fine. I think it's decent enough here. Exploud's other attacks are also pretty good. Base Control is a 30 Snipe for 2 energy, which is quite strong, to be honest. If you've been using Breaking Sound enough times, you're probably going to have some things in KO range here. And then the other 2 attacks are mostly facilitated by Boost Energy. So Thunderous Roar is 30 with Auto Confusion. That can sometimes come up. Confusion is a very annoying status to play around. And Hyper Voice just lets you burst out of nowhere. 1 energy attached from Breaking Sound stuff plus Boost Energy gives you 60 out of nowhere, which can be very hard to play around actually. You've got to be very careful with what you have in the active against this, because if it has just 60 HP left, then you're risking just getting blasted in one shot by it. Otherwise, I probably want to try and fit the 4th Dunsparce back in here. Looking at the way percentage stuff works out, it's most likely better to have this, maybe instead of a Dual Ball. I like the idea of having 2 Dual Ball, but I just, this card is so frustrating to play, because if you just flip 2 tails on it, your entire game plan is completely ruined, but whatever, right? Friend Ball is excellent for this deck because so many decks basically every deck is playing Dunsparce at the very least, and most of the time they are going to have that card out. So honestly, I'd play more of it if I had it, or especially over the Dual Ball here, because you can search any colorless Pokemon so long as the opponent has a colorless out. So, you know, you can get Delcatty, you can get the Exploud line. Absolutely phenomenal card for this deck. Exploud is a single prize Pokemon with 120 HP, so Mr. Briny makes so much sense here. You really don't need a ton of energy on this card at any given time, so just playing a lot of this is really good. And then, yeah, 4 Rare Candy, because you can just immediately attack with the Exploud as well, so you don't have to go through Ladrid, but it's very easy to, like, cycle through a bunch of these. So, super good card, and hopefully we get to see it at the weekend. It's got a very solid Gorbis matchup, so we'll have to see. Should be good, regardless. So that is... those are the 4, like, big decks that I have. They're much more up there in terms of the meta stuff. I have quite a few, like, off-meta ones here as well, though, so let's take a look at some of my preferred ones here. Sceptile Muck is an interesting setup here. I have most of my other decks do revolve around the Sceptile line here. What can I say? I've been trying to play Venusaur since the very beginning of the draft, right? To varying degrees of success. But Energy Trance is just one of my favorite abilities of all time, really. Being able to preserve your energy in play so that you can abuse the Pokemon Nurse, or in this case, also abuse Green Heal, which is one of the few ways of spread healing in this this format. So Sceptile EX's Green Heal, for all of your Pokemon that have a Grass Energy attached to them, you heal up to 40 damage off them. So if the opponent is actually on something like the Exploud, or a myriad of other ones, there's so many cards in this format that spread 10 to all of your guys, and that's not slowing down anytime soon. Green Heal just gives you a way of being able to selectively remove basically all of those damage counters. And with the Sceptile regular one here, you can transfer the energy where it's needed, and so long as you just have a few energy in play, you can just heal whatever you want, which is crazy good. The Mug is kind of the other aspect of this deck, where you're looking to stop the opponent from having a good setup. Mug's Toxic Gas only works whilst it's the active Pokemon, so if you bench this, then you can use your Energy Trance for the turn. So it does conflict a tiny bit, but not too much, not as much as you would expect. So this gives you a different weakness as well, because the Sceptile is weak to fire, and paradoxically grass. I mean, I guess it's bug and poison, right? But yeah, it's weak to itself, which is kind of weird. But this gives you an option against the fire decks that otherwise you may struggle against, especially considering fire is usually revolving around Blaziken, which has energy acceleration built in, right? This gives you a shot at disrupting that, so it's pretty good. And then the Wobbuffet, because we can, more or less, Safeguard is pretty good against Blaziken specifically, because Blazy X does not like dealing with this thing. It's weak to Psychic and can't touch it, so yeah, they can snipe around it, but that's expensive and difficult to do consistently. So it's neat. There's a balance of it here, but I think it's a little bit predictable is not the right word, but if the opponent knows what they're doing against this deck, like if they know how to play around it, even just putting a Warp Point in place so they can use their powers, because if you don't have both Mucks set up, it's a little bit too one note in that aspect. Maybe if I had the third Muck like Matt does, but I don't, thankfully, so that's it. Flygon is probably my biggest pet deck that I don't think we're going to get to see, only because the Flygon itself is just a little bit too weak overall. I love this card because, like, Rainbow Burn was my biggest success in the E-Series, right? This is just a super cool card to have around. 30 plus 10 for each different type of basic energy that's on this thing. This time it does it for 3 energy baseline instead of 4, so it is possible to hit for 60 for free, which is respectable. It's not stellar, but it does the job. It's got a lot of HP, so once again, you can tank with this thing. This deck doesn't actually play... there's a few things I would need to tweak with this deck. One of them is that it doesn't play a way of like tanking with this. Maybe Mr. Brinies would be good in here, but it's just hard to fit in, right? But the real reason why this deck has any legs whatsoever is because of Energy Shower. And this is where the lament comes in, because I don't have enough Double Rainbow to really make this tick. You don't want to use Double Rainbow on the Flygon that you are attacking with, but you use Double Rainbow as a setup tool for your other Flygon. Attach any number of basic energy you want from your hand to your Pokemon in any way that you like, but the cost is Grass and Lightning, which is awkward and hard to do. But that is fully fulfilled by one singular Double Rainbow energy. So if you can attach a DRE to this thing and have about 3 or 4 energy in hand, this just gets going immediately, and it's really good. The rest of the deck just like facilitates it. It's a pretty consistent shell. It's not like, as far as stage 2 decks go, this one is one of the less bricky that I have come across, so that's neat, despite how like convoluted it is to play here. But again, the numbers are just a little bit low here. 60 for 3 is passable, but beyond that, it's like 70 for 4 different energy, 80 for 5. It's not hitting enough to really help here. Add to the fact that there's no stadium card in here, which does hurt quite a bit. You don't really get impacted negatively by any of the stadium cards, but you do probably need Desert Ruins in here to go against the bigger stuff. It's decent against non-EXs, but 150 HP EXs just don't care about this thing. And that's what makes this a little bit too far below the curve. If you can get enough energy in play though, Magnetic Force is super good. That's the other sort of direction that you could take this, is just focus on Magneton as a secondary attacker. So there are definitely ways that you can tech this out. I don't know, I think it's just a little bit too weak, unfortunately. And then we get the stuff which is definitely weak, but very irritating to go against nonetheless. Sceptile with Wailord. We haven't seen Wailord much. I've been trying to make it work for a while now, and it just hasn't quite come together. But good lord, this card is obnoxious if you can actually pull it off. Dwindling Wave is a pretty hairy 100 damage, but it's a prohibitively expensive cost in most decks, where, yeah, free water and a colorless on something that you can't use Mr. Briny on to full heal is really annoying, and if it has any damage counters on it, it's 10 less for everyone that's there, so keeping this thing healed enough is very difficult. And that's where the Sceptile comes in, right? Once again, Green Heal is super good here, but also you can use Energy Trance and then follow that up with Pokemon Nurse, which is just Max Potion, or, you know, one single target Pokemon Center, or Cheryl if you want to look at it that way nowadays. Super good card for a 200 HP Pokemon. Like, what on earth is taking this down quickly? Very few cards, like Sceptile EX and Raichu EX are two of the only ones. Super scary on that aspect. But it's very hard to get to that game state. This is about as consistent as I've been able to make the list, and I'm still not really sold on it being super good. Shoutouts to Crystal Energy in this deck though actually having a purpose, because if you have a Grass Energy on one of your Pokemon, you can treat this as a Grass Energy, so you can Energy Transit, but if you have a Water on the same Pokemon, like the Wailord, you can then use it as a Water for its attack cost. So it kind of provides double duty, which is really good. I don't know, maybe I need to just bring this one out just for the memes, but it's awkward, and it has a really bad Blaziken matchup too. You'd expect, oh, it's a water deck, of course it's going to be good against that, right? Nope, because Blaziken just hits far too much on the Wailord, and then you just don't have energy to play with it, so it's pretty rough. I think there might be a way of working around it, but oh, it's not great, especially not when it also one-shots Sceptile, so your Energy Trance gets put offline as well. So, I don't know. Then we have my own Blaze deck. Unfortunately, there's no way I can get regular Blaziken anymore, because Pepper's got the only other 3 that are in the draft, like, period. So I'm stuck with 2 Blaze EX and 2 Rayquaza EX that just can't really do anything anymore. And that's unfortunate, because Blaziken EX is, like, if Gorbis is the strongest attacker, Blaze is definitely the strongest EX attacker that we have here. And Volcanic Ash is just absurd. You read this for the time period and it's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, discard 2 fire, sure, but snipe 100? 100 is enough to one-shot almost everything that isn't, like, another one of these giant EXs. And even, like, the stage 1 EXs get killed by this, so it's like, what on earth are you doing? This card is absurd. Like, so far above the regular power curve. Add to the fact that regular Blaziken can accelerate the energy you're discarding to the bench next turn. It's just crazy. My solution is to play Venusaur, because Venusaur lets you attach 2 energy from your hand per turn. I think I need to try and get the second Magneton back in here, so maybe just entirely focus on the Blaze and ignore Rayquaza exclusively. I don't know, I'm not really sure exactly how to fix this one, but if you can get 2 energy in hand every turn via using Magneton, you're able to just use Volcanic Ash turn after turn after turn, which is kind of insane, to be honest. Blaze Kick is also really good, not to underestimate that. You can use this as an early game attacker as well. Maybe if we use like Pokemon Nurse in here or something, we could focus entirely on that. I don't know. Point is, like, the card is crazy, I just no longer have the card pool to facilitate it here. And then, if we want to look at the really dumb decks, this one's never going to see the light of play because I honestly don't think it's that good, but it was a surprise top 8 at Worlds, which is kind of crazy. It was a less consistent list than this as well, which is also really crazy. I feel like I probably need to try and change a bit around just so I can get more stuff in that. Maybe take out like one each of the... Well, take like one Oddish out or something and take all the Fan Club away. Or just take a Whelmer and put the Dunsparce in and just have it early game setup, really. But the idea with this, of course, we've mentioned the Wailord already. This guy does a ton of damage, but it needs to be healed all the time in order to actually get that damage output. Enter Blossom to heal 20 every turn, and then its own Super Deep Dive lets you heal 30 from it, and then switch to one of your bench Pokemon. That bench Pokemon is going to be a Fossil, where the Fossil itself is just a doesn't give up a prize Pokemon that, yeah, it has some menial effect, it's not really that important. The point is, you switch to a Fossil, the opponent has to either KO the Fossil or like play Reversal or something like that to try and get the Wailord back out, and you just do this 2 or 3 times to full heal again, and Wailord can hit for 100 and it's great. You have a Vileplume here to poison the opponent as well. It is on a coin toss, but this gives you a little bit more chip damage. Sometimes you don't always have to get the full payout on Dwindling Wave, but there's too many things that deal with this deck, unfortunately. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's definitely not up there as a particularly good deck at this point. And then the last one, a little bit more of a creative thing. This isn't actually the final version I've had of this, I think. I have since taken out the Corsola and 2 of the Dual Ball to put Dunsparce in. I'm trying to play without Dunsparce sometimes, but that's just a bad idea in this format. One of the things that Sceptile does really well is healing stuff which has taken damage on the bench, but a lot of decks don't do that, they just go straight for the throat. So this is one interesting way of forcing the hand a little bit, and actually, you know, doing a lot of things that Sceptile generally has an issue with too. One of the problems from this and Venusaur in the past as well is that if you don't get to keep your energy in play, you just don't get to use energy traps, right? All the opponent's got to do is just focus on where your energy is on the board, and that's it. It's game over, right? If they knock out your big attacker that's got 4 energy on it, how do you rebuild? Camerupt is the way you rebuild here, and this is just really neat. You get to use the Delcatty in order to discard the energy, keep your engine going, draw a bunch of cards, and then the Camerupt itself lets you recover the energy you discarded that you can then transfer wherever you need to with the Sceptile. The disadvantage of the Camerupt is that it puts damage counters on itself when it takes an energy back, but the Sceptile EX lets you heal all of that damage off. And so it creates this neat little kind of recursive loop, I suppose, where you just get to maintain and accelerate a bunch of energy into play, and you can alternate between Slashing Strike doing 100 damage. You can't use it in consecutive turns, but you can use those off turns to heal all of the stuff that's on the bench, and also heal Sceptile a little bit too. Don't underestimate Poison Ring, mind you. This is an attack I've not talked about yet, but it's kind of absurd. 40 damage, also poison, the opponent can't retreat next turn. So it's like a minimum of 70 when you think about it if they can't like play a switch card to get out the active. Because it's doing, 40 base plus the 10 going into their turn. If they don't evolve or switch, it's 10 going into your turn, and then 10 again because they have to still be active. So it adds up extremely quickly, and sometimes you can get knockouts with the poison going into your turn again, and you can just Poison Ring a new thing. Very, very strong card. The idea behind the Corsola in here was more as a trying to play something that deals with the Blaziken, but honestly, it's not good enough. Coral Glow is an interesting attack, though. Like, if the opponent is setting up properly, this, like the first couple of turns of the game, will let you draw, like, 4 to 6 cards, which is pretty good. Same as Steven, really. But it has a couple of unfortunate limitations. It doesn't work on basic Pokemon. No, it only works on basics even. It doesn't work on evolutions. So if the opponent, like, second turn has all their evolutions in play, then you just don't get to draw anymore. And also, it just doesn't draw enough when you think about it. Yeah, you're giving up using Dunsparce and stuff here. Once again, the list I actually have now was taken out these two and 2 Dual Ball and just played 4 Dunsparce. Which I think works a lot better. Surf is interesting as well, though. Against non-Blaziken EX, at least, you can probably hit a reasonable number. It does two-shot things, and being water, it was to combine with high-pressure system as well, so you could switch into the stuff you actually want at the start. But that only really works if you have Dunsparce to begin with. I think playing different stadium cards here is just better. Yeah. But the concept is interesting at the very least. You've got the heal, you've got the transfer, you can do a bunch of cool stuff with it. Just don't run into fire or you will be very sad. That is the main issue here. So those are all the decks that I have at the moment. Most likely the ones that we'll see at the weekend, we're probably going to see Magma because honestly this deck is good. It's probably better than I gave it credit for initially, but I don't know. Like, it's just fine. It's simple to play. And then we might see one of the crazy things down here. I do kind of like this camera up deck, so maybe we'll try something with that. I don't know. But what about the other players? Because that's all of my stuff, but I've managed to get a couple of decks from the other players here as well. These are largely decks, with the exception of Pepper's one here. These are decks that we have seen the guys play last week. Or we would have seen if these two didn't just play each other all the time. But we'll fix that this week. So, we have Blaziken EX from Pepper here now. This is basically the completed Blaze EX list from Worlds here. This is very similar to Chris Fulop's list, except he's playing Venusaur instead of Blossom. I think the logic was that he wanted to be able to double attach active most of the time of this. I feel like the Blossom is better because it's better against Magma that this deck will struggle with otherwise. I say struggle. It has a less than perfect matchup against it, we shall say. Just because Blaze EX gets 2-shot by Groudon, or just like 2 attacks in general, and Claydol is really good against Blaze EX actually. So you have to be very careful against that deck from here. Rayquaza is a fairly solid answer until you see Zangoose, and then Zangoose just rips in too. So it's a dicey game against the Magma deck, and Venusaur is not helping that matchup. So I think you have to be very careful there, but I do see the merit in playing it because it does let you chain Volcanic Ash, the same thing I said earlier on in my own deck profile. So it's a cool idea. Pepper's been more known at the moment for his Aqua box like Rayquaza EX deal, where he's using Lantern and Manectric in a similar fashion to how I looked at the Energy Trance there. In order to power Rayquaza every turn and do a bunch of that. But that deck's kind of been falling out of favor a little bit here as Desert Ruins ripped it in two, and it's just hard to chain the stuff with it. There's a lot of weird matchups that just don't favor it too well. So I think this is going to be the way that we want to see him go this weekend. Very, very strong deck for sure, right? This was the best deck of the format in my honest opinion, and it'll be interesting to see if we can beat it. Swampert is size list over here. This one, we need to do a little bit of tweaking on this. This is based off of the Rocky Beach deck from Juniors, actually, is placed second at Worlds. It's got a lot of weird techs in it, which I guess is kind of expected from a junior deck here. The Regice is meant to be Suicune, but we just don't have Suicune EX in the player pool whatsoever, which is kind of sad. But otherwise, it's got a few weird things, like the Wobbuffet is kind of weird. We can probably cut that, simplify things down a little bit. Probably cut the rainbow-based energies here, just play a couple of lightning and full water or something. And yeah, a couple of the other weird things. There's a fan club. I think Psy doesn't have 4 Dunsparce though, so maybe this is okay. But there was initially a potion in the original list too, I'm not quite sure about that. Definitely don't like this many Oracle with Delcatty, only being at 1. But, you know, again, this is limitations of draft. The list is supposed to have 2 Delcatty, but we don't have that. So I think we need to change things a little bit around here. But the concept is pretty straightforward if you've not seen it before. Swampert attaches water from the hand to the active once per turn. It's like a limited Rain Dance, except it can go on any Pokemon, so that lets it go on the fighting type Swampert EX as well, which is where most of the biggest damage output comes in. 100 for 5, but it's modular, so it's like 20 times the energy that you have on this card, basically. Up to 5, which is crazy. It can also snipe as well, so you can pick stuff up on the bench, which is really good. It doesn't get resisted by Blossom, although it does get hit for weakness by it. It's able to one-shot Blossom, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, we need to work on it just a little bit, but the deck is still very, very strong here. Matt played Gorbis Spinette. Matt's known for pretty much being like very simple when it comes to the way his decks are constructed. You can see there's like a lot of 4s and stuff with it down here. This is fairly standard for the format too, but it's just like 4 Dunsparce, 4 Banette line, 4 Gorbis line, 4 DRE, you know. I imagine there'd be 4 reversal if he could fit it in, but I think 3 fastball is as many as he has, otherwise this master ball would probably be another fastball. Yeah, just generally consistent good stuffs, I suppose. We've gone over Banette and Gorbis already. There's a decent bit of synergy here. This deck has a hard time keeping enough energy in play without getting given like a bunch of free turns. And currently, the way it's built, it's only able to attack with Gorbis if you attach a double rainbow to it, which is a little bit of a hindrance and definitely would need to be addressed. I think a multi-energy or 2 in here would be an easy fix for that. But yeah, it's supposed to hit hard, and Water, Psychic are 2 pretty good weaknesses to hit, so generally quite good. And then Leo's deck is Shiftry, which is a little bit restricted on terms of some of the counts here. He only has 2 Copycat right now, so that is a little awkward to say the least. You definitely want more Copycat in this deck, and probably more Shaman too, but Shiftry is really, really good actually. It doesn't do well against Magma, which is probably like the worst matchup to go against with this, but it does 80 damage if you match the opponent's hand size for 1 boost energy if you have access to it, or just 3 regular energy, which is pretty good. Push Aside is also really strong too. Being able to use Darkness Energy with this is often doing 40 or even 50 damage, and just getting rid of one of the opponent's Pokemon in hand can completely ruin their next turn, which is really good. So very, very powerful all around. This deck is one of the few that takes advantage of Forest, that lets you get your special energy out of the deck by putting 2 cards back in, so that's really good. And you do still have, I'm not sure about Delcatty, Magneton and stuff in here. There aren't a lot of basic energy that you can get back with this, but I imagine it works well enough if you can draw into a couple before you get fully going here. So yeah, just a really strong overall card to go with. Um, the only real problem is that it's weak to fighting, which Magma obviously takes advantage of, so you've got to be a little bit careful there. But other than that, yeah, Archetype is real nice, and stands a decent chance against a lot of stuff that we'd see here. Also, shoutouts to this Nuzleaf. Like, Upper Hand is a stupid attack against some decks, so definitely a good one to have there. And that's pretty much it. There's a lot of decks that we have. There's a lot that we could still do as well. Pepper's been testing several Warring decks, which have had varying degrees of success. Some of them have been good, some of them haven't been. I know Matt is looking at a crazy Ninjask Gorbis deck that is probably going to get shown this weekend. That's going to be really cool. Machamp is something that's been on the fringe here as well. Claydol has been something. Claydol with the energy removing Shiftry that I played in Sandstorm is something that Sai was looking at. I wanted to build Mewtwo Gorbis, but I don't currently have the Mewtwo, which is unfortunate. We need 4 of this, so I need to get Pepper's ones. And then we were kind of looking at Wigglytuff, but we only have 2 copies in total, so it's a little bit difficult to actually play it here. Several Victory Bell lists have also been something we want to play, so there's a lot of cool stuff that we may or may not get to see within the stuff here. But yeah, hopefully this has been a decent enough summation for the format as a whole. Many of these decks you would have seen in Top Cut stuff, right? Like, we've got... The only one we're not representing here, again, is Gardevoir, because nobody's been able to convince everyone to get enough of the stuff together. Unfortunate, but hey, it is what it is. Yeah, there's a lot of these are fairly up there as far as like tiered archetypes as well, but we do have a few really cool rogue ideas as well. Again, this Wailord thing was top 8 somehow at Worlds, so you know, kudos to that. But we have a lot of cool like original enough ideas here as well. This format's pretty underexplored. There's a lot of things that you can do that you wouldn't necessarily read about and actually do well with. Pepper's Aqua stuff is a very good comparison to make with that. Anyway, that is about all I have for this. So hopefully we can show some good games in the second round of our Hidden Legend stuff tomorrow, as on recording time. And yeah, should be good. Then we move on to Fire Red and Leaf Green, where birds rule the format. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to our stuff here. Hopefully you enjoyed yourselves and learned some things about 2004. If you want to play this yourself, then, you know, all of the links are in the description and stuff to get to the mod in Tabletop Simulator, and you can do all of what we're doing here. It's great. Really fun stuff. But yeah, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.